Hello, this is Patty Montoya, Patricia Montoya. I am a Colombian American psychic medium, energy healer, death doula, so many more things. I specialize in working with people that are going through or working through trauma and working through anticipatory grief, which is the grief that we feel before someone passes away, working with people that are in that transition between life and death. And I also work with people after they have passed away so that they can connect with their loved ones that are gone. I do this with so many different modalities, and I'll get into more about what I do and how I do it later in other videos. But today I really wanted to talk about um, when those souls that have passed away ask us for forgiveness. This is something that showed up for me personally. And then once I opened up to it, I saw how so many other souls wanted to ask for forgiveness from their loved ones, family members, etc. And it's a beautiful thing. And I wanted to explain how it works and why it works and how we can address it with the most loving, compassionate energy that we can, right? So I'll start with my personal experience because everything I do is from my personal experience, right? Like I'm an expert in my life. I know a couple of things, I'm certified in a couple of things, but everything I do and I know is because I've lived through it and I've experienced it with myself or with other clients. So my mom passed away when I was 27. That was 9 years after my brother, who was 16 at that time, passed away. Um, I've had so many deaths, and I'll tell more about that in a bit. You can follow on me on Instagram, and you can see a little bit more about my story. But just to summarize, my mom was a beautiful, beautiful soul. Just those type of people that anyone that encountered her, just she made a mark on them. She was just so giving, um, not judgmental, just caring, like actually caring. I might get teary, which is completely understandable. So yeah, so my mom and I had a very complicated relationship when I was younger. I'm a very strong-headed person, and we just didn't understand each other. With time, I've come to understand that I there's this idea of prenatal emotions. When my mom was pregnant with me, she was going through a lot of things. Before she was pregnant with me, she had we had lost a brother, her son. He was 2 years old. So there's so many tragedies. There's so many things that are coming up. As I mentioned before, I'm Colombian. Or they were living in Colombia, um, and they had to move to the United States because of safety reasons. I'll go more into that in another video. So I just inherited and kind of trapped a lot of her emotions, right? When I was in her belly. I understood this many, many, many years later. So there were just a lot of things that I felt, but I couldn't express, and my mom didn't have the words or the tools to talk to me or walk me through all of those things that had happened while she was pregnant with me. Um, so this concept is very interesting and big and complicated. It's all about kind of inherited emotions that I talked a lot about with emotion code and body code, as well as inherited trauma. Um, so I'll talk about that in another video. But so for this video's sake, there are just a lot of things that kind of I had inherited, I had felt, I had seen. There's no words. I didn't have the tools or the words to express them or ask for help, right? So um, before my mom dies, we used to live in Panama. We moved back to Colombia. I was 14 at that time, and she gets sick with cancer. I have an older sister. My older sister stays in Panama, and I'm with my youngest brother Paulo, and I'm the oldest for the first time, which is rough. We're back in a country that I love, but I just didn't feel like it was my country anymore. Moving is hard. And my mom has cancer. My parents are trying to kind of figure out their own shit. My dad is devoted to my mom, and I'm trying to do all of this by myself, right? With very little guidance or support. And I'll go into that much more. So my mom has cancer, breast cancer. She survives. She's an amazing person. Um, and I have a lot of guilt about those times, which I work through them a lot. I have a lot of guilt of I should have done more. My mom, I think as many more moms can relate, was just very given, very go, all on the go, working very hard. And she kind of like, she got sick, and as soon as she could get out of bed, she got out of bed. And I have a lot of guilt of not giving more and trying more, and teenage years, whatever. So my mom's and I relationship, as we grow older, I took a lot of responsibilities. I grew up very quickly. I was very much an adult, very young. My brother gets sick when I was 17 years old, senior in high school, SATs, college applications, all of that is going on. Parties, going out with my friends, right, saying goodbye. I was living in Colombia, I was moving to the United States. And again, I'm the adult in the house. My brother's in and out of the hospital. My parents are in and out. They're devoted to him, which I completely understand. This is not judgmental. This is just kind of facts, right? And yeah, it's amazing. You're, like, um, a senior in college that basically has no parental supervision, but at the same time, it wasn't like that. There were just a lot of different emotional things going on. So again, there's a lot of judgment with a lot of love from my end toward my parents of how they should have done. My brother passes away, and again, there's just so many other emotions that come up. They are like basically bedridden, to call it that. I'm moving to the United States for college. They just were kind of like, they said, like, we're not parents anymore. Like, you guys are gone, and Pablo's gone, and Tomas is gone. Tomas was my older brother, and you're on your own, and good luck. So in Colombia, we're very family oriented. Sorry, we're very family oriented, and we're very supported. So that was a little weird for me. I go to college, blah blah. And then our relationship gets better, because we all mature and we understand, and it just becomes more friend to friend and mother-daughter relationship. All of this to tell you that there's a lot to forgive and a lot to discuss. My mom gets sick with pancreatic cancer. I have a feeling that she knows. I think she knows. She says, my dad says she didn't, but whatever. I have a feeling that she knew she was gonna die, and she was just kind of avoiding it because she didn't want to go through the whole thing. There is no certainty. Doctors didn't really know. Whatever. Point is that she got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I was living in the United States. We rushed back to Colombia. It was like, I don't know, a month since that they told us, or less. She passes away, and I carry a lot of guilt. When my brother had passed away, my mom carried a lot of guilt. And I was like, I don't understand. You did everything you could and more. Like, you went above and beyond for my brother. You shouldn't carry guilt. But it's human in us to be guilty. That's a topic for another story. So there's a lot to talk through. Um, so when my mom passes away, I started doing a lot of healing work, and I discovered this idea of inherited trauma, this idea of inherited emotion, this idea that when we are in our mom's womb, like, there's no barrier, emotional barrier. So all of her emotions are just kind of, like, I just trap them all. There's no working through them. So I understand that, and I start doing my healing. And I think, as I mentioned, there's no timeline in the other side, right, in the other life. But she starts kind of, so I didn't feel my mom, to be honest, for about 2 years or so after she passed away, 2 or 3 years. I knew she was there. She was sending me signs, and I'll talk more about that. So many topics. But I didn't sense her, like I didn't feel her until she started showing up very strongly, and I'm like, and she's asking for forgiveness, and I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you could have not been a better mother. Like, you're an amazing mom. You were super giving. You're always there for us. Like, there's nothing to forgive. Again, like, we had our differences, but there's just so many intricacies. Overall, she was a beautiful, giving, like, spectacular mom. um so like, I don't, there's nothing to forgive. Like, you're crazy. Like, stop it. Like, I cannot do this. So fast forward, I opened my gifts to talk to her, and I start channeling. Right, my mentor, like, she's trying to talk to you, write it down, like, journal, because I love to journal. That's the easiest way for me to channel. Start um writing, and this, just like, pages and pages. And when I say pages, it's pages and pages and pages, and I write by hand. um of her story. She's like, Patty, I'm so sorry about this, but you, like, not in an excusing way, but in an explanation way of, we didn't have the tools back then. We didn't have the resources. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't even know how to work through my emotions. There's shit happening daily. Like, I'll go into that later on, but they're just trauma, 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 trauma. Like, there's no moment to breathe. And once you finally breathe, there's something else up. So, like, what do I address? So, things just kind of took a turn, and she wasn't able to kind of manage things as she would have been able to nowadays, or how I've done my work, right? So I do my work, and I let my mom share her story, and it's beautiful. Obviously, it's beautiful. And you know what? It made so much sense. She wasn't asking to be forgiven for the general, but it gave us a conversation. It gave us a way to talk about all of these things that I've been learning about, ourselves, myself, my family, our history, epigenetics, all of these things. And it gave us a kind of a way to have a closure, right? And that's basically what I like to do. That's what I like to offer when I do mediumship, kind of, appointments. But all of this to say is that, I'm getting nervous. All of this to say is that when our loved ones are asking for forgiveness, they're coming from a place of, again, love, acceptance, and they're seeing the whole picture, right? They see the whole picture, and they're like, you know what? I should have been there for you. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the capacity. Like, I cannot go back and change it, but I can say, I can acknowledge. I hurt you. Maybe it's not asking for forgiveness, but it's acknowledging that, you know, I can see where you're coming from. And that's all. That's it, right? They're not saying, oh my God, they're not like hitting themselves because they were horrible people. I don't know about horrible people. I'm not going to talk about them. But in this case, she was being just very genuine and authentic. So I always tell my clients that when we get into a reading and we're connecting with someone that has passed away, they're coming from a place of love and understanding and acceptance. So sometimes you're expecting people to have this personality or characteristics, and they're soft, and you're like, what happened? Like, that's not the person. That's not, you're connected to the wrong person. And I always need to tell them, like, or remind them that they have gone through their own process. They have gone through their own healing. They have gone through their own, like, therapist and spa days, right? They have done the work. They see it from a bigger perspective, right? So sometimes I get clients, for example, especially men that have passed away, and they abandoned their kids, or they hit their wives, or they were narcissistic, or whatever, right? And I explain, I'm like, your father or your uncle or your grandfather, whatever, or your husband, right, is showing up and is saying that he's very sorry. He's very sorry that when you guys were together, he mistreated you, that he understand that he never listened to you, that that he apologized, that he wasn't there when you needed him. Um, and people are in shock, right? These are sometimes people that were never there for their kids, or they were very abusive to their partners, right? And it's not an excuse. We're not excusing their behavior, but we're giving them a space to be like, you know what? I I should have been better. There's no excuse, We might not want a relationship, but I just wanted to show up and tell you that. And maybe at that point the client is very upset or hurt, or just kind of like, you were never in my life, why are you showing up now? Like you're basically my biological father, and whatever, please go away. But I found that even though the first reaction is that, afterwards, a couple of weeks or months, they're like, you know what? I needed that to kind of just move forward, right? Like it helps us get an understanding. We're not excusing their behaviors, but it gives us an understanding of, okay, there were so many other factors, right? I didn't understand that you had PTSD and you literally couldn't be a father. So that in your mind was better for me growing up than to have an abusive parent in the home. So in their minds, with the information that they had at that moment, right? That's what they thought it was the best for that kid, right? So they're not excusing their behavior, they're just explaining. They're saying, I wish life was different. This was what happened. I really am here if you need me, but I understand if you don't want to have a relationship with me, right? And that's just healing, right? I had a client that her father was super abusive, and she's like, I don't want him to come, I don't want him to come. And she's talking to him like before we meet, and he shows up for like a second, and I'm like, he's here if you want to talk to him. He has a couple of things to say. And she's like, you know what, I'm not ready. And that's totally okay, right? We don't have to take their apologies, we don't have to accept what they're saying. But what I have found is that most everyone, I'm not gonna generalize, but most everyone has something to share, has something to say, hey, you know what? I see you, I acknowledge you, I value your emotions, I value your life experience. I wish things had been different. This is where I'm coming from. I just wanted you to know that. And we can decide if we want to hear them or not. We can decide what to do with that information. For me, it was very valuable. For me, it gave me a lot of closure, a lot of healing. And with that, I've done a lot of work with the rest of my family, right? Um, and the work is never done, at least in my end. But it helped me. And that was a decision. That's a decision I did. And I pushed it a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. I've been pushing a lot of my uncles and grandparents and great, because it's hard. It's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of conversations, a lot of energy that you're holding for them. I found that at the end of the day, it's a beautiful process, and it's worth it if you can handle it, if you can afford it emotionally, to kind of listen to them and talk to them and hear what they have to say, and also share your truth and your knowledge. I always say there's three sides of the story, your side, my side, and the truth. And the truth being all of these different situations that show up in life. So that was the story for today. I know I talked a lot and I share a lot of personal stories, my dogs. You might have heard my dogs. I have two beautiful dogs. Maybe one day I'll show them. But other than that, yeah, follow me on Instagram, Titiposa Coach, or look at my website and let me know what else you want me to discuss. Talk, talk.